Okay, so then I will maximize this. All right, I kind of want to do a slight review and just discussion of what we've got. This stuff is really complicated in the initial setup, and I found that this is true of frameworks in general. But the one complaint about Django is that it's really hard to set up. Once you've got it set up, it's not too hard to use. Right, it's pretty easy. I'm going to open up VS Code.
But Steve, I think it's a good trade-off, right? Like for instance, like assembly or C, right? That's easy to set up, but to use it is.
But frameworks, I mean, part of what they want, it's using, they want to separate concerns. So typically in these frameworks, you separate out everything. So there's a models folder, and there's a views folder, and there's a templates folder, and there's, everything has its own place. Everything is separated out into its own place. That's not atypical. You'll see the same thing in, as I said, if you ever do Android code, or if you ever do iOS even, they break everything out into separate things, even to the point of where, like in Android, you have a string folder where you put in your strings that will be displayed in your form rather than just write your strings into your form. I mean, they separate out everything. So, and again, I wanted to kind of emphasize that, that you want the tech app that I'm doing in class here is just the sample. It's not the assignment. The assignment is to do pretty much the same thing, but in the Python app. Does that make sense? A lot of the stuff that we'll do will be very little variance, just the names will change. But I want you to do it once on your own, which is what the Python app does. I also did, just before I get going here, I don't know that this is all that useful, but I did a kind of a checklist of things that we did, because there's a lot of them, right? Slowly, slowly. Do I not have internet? There it goes, just real slow. All right. So I'm going to go to, I should probably go to Canvas too, but I'm going to do Conger ITC. Is it going to go there? Blogspot. There's a link in Canvas. So these are the steps that we did, and if you want, I can make it bigger. So, and if you do it, the steps are pretty much the same on any platform. It's a little bit different on Windows. It's typically easier on Windows, but you still have to do a little bit of it with the command line. Right? You still have to do the download the Django with the command line and etc. But you create a directory for the Django project. You install Django into that directory, right? Before that, this is assuming that you have, on Windows, we all have this installed. On Windows, if you're doing it on your own machine, you would have to install the Postgres, and you would need to install Python, right? You need those two first. I won't install Django without Python. Django is just a set of libraries that basically allow Python to talk to the web. Natively, Python can't talk to the web, right? So the Django, there's at least one other framework, which is Flask. Anybody ever used it? I haven't much either, but it's a simpler framework. You maybe could do that. It's just that it's less flexible, has less features too. We installed the virtual environment. The option to not do that would be if you wanted to tie it right away to Apache or some web server, right? But for development, we set up the virtual environment. And it's built into Django. I mean, it's part of the libraries that come with it. And it allows you to serve locally. If you set it up in Apache, not likely anybody's going to see it because they'd have to know your IP address. But if they knew the IP, they could see your website. we have to activate the virtual environment. This is the only part that you might have to do more than once. We might have to reactivate it a couple of times. On my laptop, which I wiped out, my daughter bought a new laptop, so I took her old one. I wiped it out and put Linux on it just to get better at Linux. I have not had to reactivate it, but I don't. But some of the machines here I have had to, so I don't know. We created the project tech reviews. Once we have the virtual environment, we can create the projects, and it's really simple. You just do Django-admin start project and give it a name. It creates the project folder. It creates the project level files. If you switch into that folder, then you can create the apps. And the way you do that is just Python. On these machines, it's Python 3. On Windows, it's just Python. Python 3, manage Py, start app, and give the app a name. That's all there is. These commands are really simple. They're a pain when you don't type them right, but they're really pretty simple. And then, as I said, do the same things with Python code. That was the first assignment. Now, if you're all the way through here and didn't turn anything for the first assignment, then that's fine. Because I'll basically want you to just do the same link for both if you've done all of this, right? Because as we go on, your GitHub will have all of your files anyway. I just look for what I want for that assignment. So for the configuration, and this is complicated too, but the nice thing about all of these steps is that we don't have to do them again for the most part. Once they're set up, they're set up. So we created the Tech Review DB and the Python Club DB in Postgres. And again, Postgres I just like it as a database. It works really well with Django and Python, but you can use MySQL. You could use, if you were on Windows, you could use SQL Server. You can use almost any database. There are drivers for all of those databases. For Postgres, part of the driver is that Psycho PG2, which we had to install. I'm not sure if I put that as a step. I think I did. But once it's installed, it's installed. You never have to do that again either.
Yes.
So, I did open VS Code and did a terminal. It's really nice to have a terminal. You don't have to do that. You can have a separate terminal. In Windows, again, switching to two different platforms, the only difference is that instead of a bash shell, it will be PowerShell. Okay? The commands don't change. They're exactly the same. Whether it's one other thing that'll drive is a little bit different is my slashes will go this way, and on Windows they'll go this way. All right. Oh, it's fading away. So then we did the terminal, the settings pie. This is important. And the first few times I did this, I kept wondering, why is nothing working? You have to register your app with the settings. There's that thing in settings, we'll look at it again just real quickly, where you have a list of all the registered apps. Most of them are system apps, but you have to register your own app as well. Right? It looks at that to see what the apps are. Remember, a project can have many apps. Our projects have one app, but they could have multiple apps. And you need to register them so it knows what it's looking for. The other thing in settings pie is this is where you specify the database. The default database, if you were to leave it alone, is SQLite, right? And that could work if your data needs are really small. Actually, for us, it probably wouldn't work. But I wanted to show you hooking to a real database. So we changed the database. We did download the Psycho PG2. One of the things I find, particularly in the Linux environment, is that every once in a while you'll just say, "Oh, we don't have this. You better download it." And in Linux, it's really easy, and actually in Windows too, with the Python stuff, that pip thing that allows you to install things, if you just ask for it, it'll go find it. You know, that's not typical of Windows, but it works in that way in Windows too. All right, so we migrated the databases. This is something that could have waited, but it's a good test at this point to see what you've got. The database that it'll do, so it'll move it over, and it puts in all the authentication stuff, the users, the user groups, all the authentication. They're all empty. They're all empty tables at this point, but it moves them over. It's a good test.
Steve, could you confirm where does it move them from?
It moves them from the Python libraries to the Postgres, the database. They're all there, and they're part of the Django libraries. They're actually, we will modify them toward the end, because one of the last things we're going to do is we'll add logins and user verification, and then those databases will have some content. But yeah, they're in the Python Django folders. And one of the things about this is, and this is true of Python in general, half of what it does is like a magic trick, right? It does so many things so abstractly that it's really hard to know what's going on sometimes in the background, because it just does things for you. That's not atypical of web frameworks, though. In Windows, when I used to do the .NET framework, I mean, basically you just pointed at the database and it created a whole file full of classes, one class for every database table, right? We're going to do the opposite of that, although you could do that in Python too, in Django. We're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to write the tables in Python, and then it will create them in Postgres. Then we changed the URLs pod, right? So there's two URLs. There's the project level, and actually there isn't one at the app level. So what we said is to include the URLs file in the app, and then we added a URLs file to the app. That's good practice if you're going to have multiple apps in a project. For us, it really wouldn't have mattered much, but I thought it was good to see how to do that. Use the include. And then that's about all we did. That was the full configuration. Does that make sense? There's a lot of steps there. And one of the things that's drove me nuts, because I've made about 6 Django sites in the last few months, is if you forget a step along the way, it can drive you nuts to figure out where you forgot it. The thing we're going to do today, too, is going to have multiple pieces to it. Just real quickly, I'll kind of repeat. So when you're looking at this in Visual Studio, there's a tech review folder, right? And then there's a tech app. The tech review is the project level folder. So let's close tech app for a moment. Tech review 2 down here is the project. It has managed Pi in it, which we're going to use a lot. It also has the settings, and it has that URLs, the original URLs. So the original URLs, this is what we changed it to. Let me get it so you can see it a little better. We added the include, and we added a path statement that uses the include that says to look for a URLs file in tech app. Yours is tech. Most of you did tech instead of tech app. And that's what I said to do. If you did tech app, whatever you named your app. Right? So this is at the project level, and we're saying to look for the URLs at the app level. And if I go back over here, under tech app, we added the URLs. Mine, maybe it is. It's totally empty. I did add the import, which we can do today. We'll be using it today, but we'll fix that later. The other thing, just as a quick thing, just to look at the settings. So settings Pi is in the project level. And when you register the app, all you have to do is add this tech app, right? So these are if you look at what was migrated, they mostly come from authorization, sessions, and messages. There are database tables for all of those things when we did the migrate. So these are all built-in libraries that have stuff in it, right? The authentication, managing sessions. Do you guys know what sessions? I wasn't going to do a lot with that, but there's so much you could, because every user has a session, right? And you can, managing sessions, it means you can, one person can do something different on the website than another person, right? They're separated from each other. They each have their own session ID. So if somebody saves something, it goes for that person, not for some other stray person that's on the website, right? It keeps things, users isolated from each other. Every person on a website at the same time has a different session ID. And it manages most of that transparently. There are lots of things that I'm not probably going to cover that if you really want to get into this, you can, like cookies and things. I mean, we could maybe look at some of those things along the way. But anyway, you have to register your app. The other thing that I did is the database. And again, this is a little bit more complex than if we were just doing the SQLite. I'm really not, so this seems to be the driver for Postgres SQL, the Psycho. I don't know why it's called Psycho. PG2. But the main things are, once you've got this back end, and this is true of most, other than the SQLite, because SQLite doesn't have multiple databases. The SQLite only has one database. So when you're in here, but there would be a different SQLite for every project. This, you just give whatever the backends, it's always going to be GB, the Django DB backends. That's a library. When you have the dots like this, Django is the main collection of libraries. DB means there's a collection of DB classes or methods. I'm not sure which they would be. And then one of the methods is Postgres, right? You could have a similar thing with MySQL, right? You just put in MySQL. It's just a different driver that it puts in there. So this line changes. Whatever the name of the database, for other things, there's always a name for your database. The user, Postgres's default admin user is Postgres. I think I told you before we should have, for security reasons, we probably should have created a new user, different name, but we're going with, as long as you know that you shouldn't use the default admin name for this. Localhost is what you have when it's local. If it was on Azure or AWS, they would give you a path, and you would put that path in there. And the port might differ then, because we're using the default port. Does that make sense? Typically, when you put something on the cloud, they give you a path and they give you your port. Okay. I think that's all we did. The only other thing I want to mention is that it's this is all the sample one. You need to do the same thing with the Python Club. The difference being that this would be Python Club DB. That's actually the only difference on that. And when you register it, it would be Club or whatever you named it. Not. Okay, so everything is pretty much the same between the two. It's just. All right, are we ready to move on to the next? So this Zoom drives me crazy a little bit, but what I want to do today, I guess I do want Canvas. So let's go to, I'm going to open another Canvas. Hopefully I can do this without, we will need GitHub. Actually, I think I can do it in just Canvas. All right, go. Why is it not going? There it is. No. All right, so let's go to assignments. And as I said, it's so this is the third assignment. The first two, I tried to break these. We're building one site. That's the whole quarter. We're building just one site. We just keep adding to it. I tried to break these up into really small chunks. One of the things you can tell me, because this is the first time I've done the Python, is are these too small a chunks or too large a chunks? You know. So what we want to do today is we're going to create our index page. We're going to create a view called index. We're going to add a base HTML file, which is sort of the HTML template that everything else is a plugin to. You know, what is it they call it? PHP. When you load into a, there's a word. But it basically,
Server?
no, it's an include.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll have to modify the URL file, and then we'll run the server and we'll see if we can look at it. All right. So that's what we're going to do with luck. So I'm going to go back here, and the file that I want is in the tech app. It's in the app one. And it's sort of down, you know, mine is down way at the bottom. Can I go any further down? Yeah, I can a little. I want to do views py. And if you look at the code for that, which means I have to move around again, it just says create your views here. So there's a couple of different ways to create views. I'm going to do them as just functions, but you can also create views as classes. I'm going to do functions because I think it's easier to start off with. So if you remember your Python, so we want to do def. We need to give it a view. So I'm just going to call it index. And in the parentheses, I'm going to do request. So we are importing a request, and then we do a colon. Okay. So most of our views will start this way. There'll be def, the name of the view, and typically they'll have requests. They may take other parameters as well. Requests actually comes up here from render. We'll be adding lots of library imports at the top. But we don't need much for this first one. But over time, that'll get to be fairly long, the number of imports. All right, so because this is, we're not doing anything in this. Later we will come back and we might modify this to do something. Right now, all we want to be able to do is just pass it, right? So I'm going to do a return render. And I'm going to do request. And I'm going to do, so we've got, mine is called tech app, right? Index.html. These will get more complex as we go on, but that's actually all we're going to do. We're just telling it to render a web page. Right? Later we'll be telling it to do other things, like get stuff from the model or calculate things. Yeah. So I think you're at the wrong folder level. Let's go file, open folder. And then we'll have the views. Questions on this so far? Is that clear? It looks kind of, I mean, clear in terms of visual? You can see it okay? Yeah, okay. How about in the far back? Yeah. I'm going to give it just a second. Now, if you just did tech, do tech. This is the name of your app. Although we're actually going to do a couple of things here, and I just want to make sure everybody's ready before we do it. So, are we ready? Okay. So I'm going to go over to the files, which means navigating over here. And inside of Tech App, I am going to add, so I just right-clicked on Tech App. I'm going to add a new folder. So this is going to be where our web pages go, basically. So I'm going to do a new folder. And this folder is going to be called Templates. Couple of things. Lowercase t, right? It has to be called Templates. Just as a side, you don't have to use the structure. You don't have to use a templates folder, but if you don't use a templates folder, you have to change some settings. So I'm going with the defaults because I don't want to go in and change a bunch of settings. But if you're doing this for real and you didn't want to follow the default layout, you can change it. You have to go into the config files to change it. Now, inside of templates, I'm also going to add a folder. And this folder will be called Tech App. Although if you have, it's whatever your app is named. So if it's just Tech, do Tech. By default, it's going to look for the HTML templates in a folder under template, which has the same name as the app. The reason for this, again, if you had multiple apps in the same project, you could have multiple subfolders and it would know which folder to go in to find the templates for that app. Does that make sense?
Okay, this folder.
This folder, so that inside of templates, there's a folder that has the same name as your app. So if you named it Tech, now you name it Tech. Don't name it Tech App just because I did, unless that's what you named yours. Right. The way, as I said, the way it works is that it assumes that all of your web pages are in a folder called templates, but it further assumes that the templates associated with your app are in a subfolder with that app's name. Because if you had multiple apps, you could have multiple subfolders, one for each app, and it would know where to find the templates. Does that make sense? All right. So I am going to, inside of templates, not this time, not inside the apps, I'm going to add a file. This one is on the template level, not in the sub app. And I'm going to call this file base dot, not comma, base.html, right? This is going to be the HTML template that everything else isn't included. And we could write this from scratch, but I thought you might prefer if I could just copy it. So if we go to Canvas and we go to Pages, there's a base HTML file. So we can copy and paste this in if you want. Now I did, because I wanted it to not be horribly ugly when we do it, I included Bootstrap as the default CSS. You guys ever use Bootstrap? It's a pre-built JavaScript CSS template. It allows you to do some fairly basic formatting, and it's, you know, it looks nicer than it would otherwise. You can do your own CSS. I will have to show you how to do that later. You can add your own CSS. You have to, at the top of this, put in a designation for static. Because if you're loading a static file, it needs a designation for static. We can do that later. Right now, I'm just going to copy this. And we want to go all the way down. Can I get it all? Trouble with this is if I do Control A, I think it'll get the whole page. There we go. And once we get it in Visual Studio Code, I'll show you some of the features of it. Okay, so let's move it over a little.
You're sticking it into base.
Yeah, this is the base HTML. So it's basically, right, an HTML page. Has a doc type HTML, an HTML header, has the header. All of these links are for, this one says Python Club already, so you can use that directly. I'm going to say tech reviews because this is actually for tech reviews. That's the title. All right, so the style sheet and all of this comes basically, because I didn't want to load it. The other way to do these is to download these into a folder. But you can get the Bootstrap by just referring to the files on the web.
Base.html, you just made, right, a folder?
Can you go to the right, she's a little behind, to the left.
So I made a base HTML file.
Okay.
The tech review too.
Under Tech Review 2, not under Tech App, but under Tech Review 2. Yeah.
Why you delete the check from JSU folder?
So-
Templates.
So you should have it. But we set up your Python one more than the Tech one.
Second,
What?
I don't have it yet, but that's all.
You want to call it one folder called Tech App?
Or Tech, depending on what you name
I
your.
think I have.
Yeah, okay.
And here at this level.
This is base HTML. So again, the base HTML file, and again, if you look online in GitHub, the tech review one is done. You can look at what these files look like. I mean, we're going to make some differences probably as we go on, but the basic code for the sample ones is already there. So it adds the CSS. This part, if you really wanted to, you could leave out. Right, but then it'll just be pure HTML, and be pretty ugly. I put a jumbotron at the top with tech. It's interesting. I had Club Python at the top and then tech reviews as the heading. The jumbotron, if you've seen, Bootstrap is everywhere. Actually, I think the web page for the school right now is based on Bootstrap with modifications. It gives you this big box and puts the heading inside of it.
If you go into the code, Steve, and right-click, you can format the code to have it all indented properly.
You can, yeah. I don't. The HTML doesn't worry too much. Where did you click here?
Inside the code window,
Yeah.
format document.
I'm not sure if that's useful in me because it makes the lines longer.
Oh, something like that.
I'm going to change this one to Tech Reviews 2. This is in the, there's one of the things that it gives you, this nav bar stuff, it gives you a menu system, all right? That's part of the Bootstrap. So it gives you a little bit of a menu system, and that's nice because we're going to want to add. So if you don't do the Bootstrap, you'd have to either create your own menu system or create a page of links or something. So down here, this is actually the key part of this. Notice there's block content and end block content. So every page that we make hereafter will be pasted into here. It will replace this block. This is a placeholder for everything that we do. right? So block content into block content. The percent sign, when we write things inside of here, that's basically what they'll look like. This is basically trying Python scripting inside the web page. Does that make sense? Once you've got this page, you can modify it all you want, but it's just the look and feel of the thing, and everything else gets pasted into the middle of this. So the menu, which is above that block content, is on every page, right? And the header, which is that Jumbotron, is on every page. And so it's just the content, the individual content that changes. That's fairly common with dynamic websites, is that it looks like you have multiple web pages, but really you just have one page and everything gets pushed into that. So has everybody got this? We could have walked through writing this, and it might not be a bad exercise, but I'm actually saving everything right now. Let's do save all. One of the things that I've found that can drive you crazy, you make a change and you try to run things and you never see the change, and then you realize, I forgot to save the file. So it's a good idea to save as you go. All right, so we have that. Let's do, are you guys still with me? If you aren't, you can always stop me. And if you have questions, because this is complicated in a way. We've got that. Inside the tech app, inside of templates, right? I'm going to create a new file, which will be index.html. Couple of things about the files that you put in here. So if I go back to the view, this is an empty file right now. We'll fix it in a second. When I do the view here, I wrote a little path, tech app, which is that inner side of templates, index.html. Your files have to match, right? The HTML file has to be exactly the same as what you're talking about here, or they won't work. And it is case sensitive, even on Windows. So if I were to capitalize this, then the other one would have to be capitalized. Right? It's case sensitive. All right, so let's go back. Navigating this at this Zoom is weird, but let's go back to the index.html. And what we're going to do, as I said, this is going to be really minor. We're just going to say hello. This is a website for reviewing tech something or other. I don't know what. So I'm going to do first I have to click into there. Curly brace, percent sign. We want a percent sign on the other side too, so if you want to put them both in there and then separate them. And we're going to say block content. Okay. And then we can do whatever we want in here. Although probably it wouldn't be a bad idea to do end block. And end block doesn't have a space. Block content does, but end block does not. One other thing we need to put up here, which I almost forgot. We need to say extends base.html. Right, so we need to know, it needs to know that it's part of base HTML. And it has single quotes there. So these are our Python scripting statements. And almost every page that we do will have these. There will be other pieces in there because like when we have data, we'll want to loop through things, right? So there'll be loops that are basically designed with the same kind of format. And there'll be things where we want to get the values out of the data, so there'll be lots of little curly braces. Python generally doesn't use curly braces, but the scripting sure does. Yeah.
So is the curly braces and the percent, is that Python or is that part of the whole?
So it's part of the Django. I think one of the things is because Python is not natively web, so they needed to create a scripting, to get Python into the HTML. And it's not that different than how you would do PHP and.
But this stuff's not covered in the Zelda.
I don't think so. Yeah. This is Python. This is Django specific. These things, I think.
Steve,
Yeah.
The only place where there's a space between the percent sign and the text is number line 5. Is that correct?
There shouldn't be any spaces. Where did I put a
Well, you
space?
said there was just one space.
Oh, I meant there's a space here, but not here.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, it's not, these should be right up against stuff. I don't know that a space would matter, but it might. Yeah,
But block contents to reserved words.
yes. And so is in block.
I think I put in place that HTML should be the same level with index, so I put under the.
No, it shouldn't be. Oh, your
Yes,
base,
yes.
your base one should be,
Yeah,
so
so.
index should go into
Said-
text.
I guess it's Scotch. Well, that's actually Irish. Irish.
Because when I say look at the index will be under the sentence and then base under the sentence.
They think
No,
of
the
Scotch
base
actually
should not be
cheaper
under
than
the-
Irish
Yeah,
because it's colder.
exactly. How can you move it?
And it's
Well, I
like,
was trying to move it.
you need colder. You can't go below
Or
absolute zero.
maybe I open it because,
It's not letting me.
Ah,
It's giving,
Probably
oh, there's,
go
cancel,
below.
there it is. All right,
Yeah.
so base is now there.
Ireland's like the tropics to us.
and index,
I just moved it. So it's
That's where we go on
already.
on beach vacations. It's Ireland.
All right, so in here we just want to do, for us, it's just the HTML. I'm just going to do like a heading 2. Tech reviews. Welcome. That's not how I spell welcome. You can type whatever you want. Okay. So all I wanted to do for this is we're just going to create an index page and try to get it up, right? So I'm just doing the H2. You could do whatever. Literally, you can put whatever you want in there. I just want to do something. We'll run it and demo it in a few moments. We still have a couple little changes we have to make to things elsewhere. Any questions on that so far? Yeah.
Just a question, how do you comment in,
Uh,
like, the normal?
I think you can comment. Now, there probably is a Django comment, but I'm pretty sure you can do this. What kind of comment do you want? I'll just say this
I
is.
like to write notes myself.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure that works in the HTML. In the actual Python files, it's just the pound sign, right? The comment.
Steve, it was helpful when you explained that we're going to be working on one project. Can you put a little more context on what we're going to accomplish with it?
Sure.
So what this tech reviews actually means we're going to.
So what I'm thinking of the tech reviews is that we will create, we'll list like tech things, So it's kind of like a review site. So say you wanted to list an iPad or whatever, and then you'll have users that could write reviews of those, and the website will have the item list, it'll have the review list.
So
Right.
you want to build a website that allows for,
Right, so it's going to allow us to enter items, and view them too. So you can see a list of what items you have in there, and you can see a list of the reviews. It's also, we're going to do a thing like, it might have a list of the items where it just lists the name, and then you click on the name and it'll give you the details about it.
so all the items will be in the database.
Yes, and all the reviews will be in the database. And there's a few other things too. I was going to, I forget exact. We'll go through it, but
And
there's
just be sure, and the other site,
the Python Club one is basically the idea that it's a club where people talk about Python, which maybe nobody would want to join. I don't know. There are such things, and basically it'll keep track of members. It'll keep track of meetings. It'll keep track of. I'm trying to remember. I think it keeps track of people can list resources that are relevant to Python.
and your thought is these are advanced website.
I don't think they're that advanced, actually. I think we're working on learning how to set up the website. There was a whole levels of sophistication that should go beyond what this class is going to cover. Question or statement?
Oh, for her comment question, what's great about Visual Studio Code is whether it's hard to keep track of all the darn semantics and syntax. If you just hit Control / they'll put a comment for the line. So
Oh,
you can go. So you don't have to worry about HTML, Python, Django, Whizbang, JavaScript, jQuery, etc.
which slash?
Control /.
Oh, yeah. That's nice. I didn't know that. The other thing to know is that you don't have to do this in VS Code, right? You could do it in Idle. You could do it in any code editor.
You do it with ILS.
Yeah.
I want line numbers.
The reason I like Visual Studio Code for this is that it has the file directories, it has the code window, and it has the bash shell or PowerShell.
What do they call that? I know it's an IDE, but I've heard it called a dashboard. There's another fancy word that specifically says what it is. When you have the file explorer, the code, and the console in one.
I'm not sure. I mean, so Visual Studio also works, but Visual Studio would only work on Windows. And Visual Studio is way more complex.
Yeah.
Visual Studio Code is basically Visual Studio where you get rid of all of the bells and whistles and just focus on the code. And actually, I prefer that. And it's free, and it works on anything. It literally is platform independent. Microsoft is trying to get open source compliant for a lot of its stuff, which is weird, but that's probably for the best.
Well, they realize they can make trillions instead of just billions.
They're making most of their money on Azure at this point, and SQL Server and Windows Server too, but mostly Azure.
Well, because now they're working on. I saw a job. They're working on exascale database.
All right. So, any other comments on this? So the stuff in here is just HTML. Anybody never done HTML? Everybody's done some HTML. We're not going to stress your HTML skills very much. It's going to be mostly paragraphs and tables and lists. Yeah.
Is this effectively assignment 3?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Except that the only difference is we're doing assignment 3, but we're doing it in Tech Review. It's just moving over to Python Club.
So we need to do this in Python Club
Yeah.
as well and then turn that one in?
Yeah, Python Club is the assignment.
Okay, I see.
So what I do in class is the Tech Review is we're doing the same things as the assignment, but we're doing it in a different project. So basically, this is to show you how to do it and then redo it again in the Python Club.
Gotcha.
And Python Club is what to turn in, right? Just because it's good to do it twice, basically. Once with me and once without. And again, the code for this is actually already online. And then I will also post what we do today again. That's why I called mine Tech Review 2, is because Tech Review is already online with all the code that we're going to do this quarter pretty much. We may take a couple of turns that aren't there, because I do respond to questions and things.
And to see that code, just.
So if you want to see that code, let's just do it real quickly. So if I just go to, actually, let's just real quickly go to syllabus, GitHub. And if you look at the repositories, there's Tech Review 2, which is the one we're doing right now. The reading app is one that I've been working on. It's kind of like doing Goodreads, but just for me. Tech Review Django is the one that's kind of like what we're doing. If you go at Tech Reviews, and if we go into like reviews, which I called it Tech App this time, but it's reviews. If I go down to views, notice the index is pretty close. I called it products here. I did it a little bit different. That's products. Here's index. Reviews. I called it reviews, the app instead of tech. But it's the same thing. Tech app index HTML and the request. And it's identical except for a couple of naming things. And you can kind of see we're going to get the products, product detail, product reviews, new product, new review, log out message, log in message, things like that. Now, again, there's a whole lot more here, and you're welcome to explore more of all of this stuff. It's a fairly robust platform, but that's, you know, if you want to look at the code, if you get lost, again, it's in the tech review, not the assignment. All right, I want to get over back to, there we go. All right, so I'm going to do, we need to do a couple of other things. It's not much else, but a couple other things. Anybody have any idea what the next thing I need to do is? It's the last bit of coding I need to do. It's like one line, too. What? No, we don't need to migrate yet. We will after we make models for the database. But right now, we're just doing this. So URLs, everything has to have a path, right? So we need to create a path. So this is the URLs in Tech App. I guess I'll do it. So we go down to Tech App, and we go down to URLs Pi, the one that we made last time. So if I come up here, it's empty. Now, if you don't have, the only thing I have is from Django URLs import path. I'm going to add one other import here. From dot import views. Dot means from the current app, right? From where we are. We're going to import views. We're importing the views folder so that we can see what views we have. So from dot import views. It knows what directory it's in, because the dot just means the current directory. So one of the things you could do in here on the Linux, if you want, you can open the file. And if we look under Django projects, there's like Python Club and then Tech Review. If we open up Tech Review, we'll see Manage Pi, and then there's Tech App and Tech Review. Under Tech App, we have these files, and then we have templates, and then Tech App with our index. So let's see if I can go back here. So I'm going to go back to Django projects. Okay, Tech Reviews. The other Tech Review has the settings and all of that. There's nothing in the site to catch, I don't think.
I'm sorry, where are we putting this information?
What, the URL?
Yeah.
You want to put it in URLs. You want to go to Tech App. So there's also a path over here, particularly if I close the open editors.
Okay.
So when you look at that, you'll see that there's Tech App, and there's also Tech Review. So if I open that, there's Tech Review. Inside of Tech Review, there's Tech App. And inside of Tech App, there are these folders. I mean, there's a navigation over here. And if you, basically what you want to do is if you click these two, it's also telling me I have 2 files I have to save. But if you click that, it will show you the tree.
And you also need to click on URLs.
Can you move them if they're not where they're supposed to be? Yes. So I'll move base HTML and then move it back. Don't do this unless you need to. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag it like if I wanted to go to Tech App. It says, are you sure you want to move it? Now this is weird, but if you go down here and mouse over, there are 2 buttons there. They don't show up until you mouse over, but there's cancel or move. I'm going to cancel, but you can move them. You can drag them to where you want them to go. Or you can cut and paste them. All right, so in the URL file, that's the wrong URL. We want the one in the Tech App, which is essentially empty. So I want to do URL patterns equal square bracket, and then I'll just press enter to put the square bracket down. Path, parentheses, index is an empty folder. Index is a default. I'm good, and then a comma, views dot index, and then I'm also going to give it a name, which I'm going to say name equals, and I'll just call it index. So let me move this over so you can see the whole line. So we're creating a path. In the future ones, it'll be the name of the view. Right? Index is an exception because it's the default. But in the future, it'll be the name of the view, views dot name of the view, and then we give it a name so that it's easier to refer to, so we don't have to path it when we do like a link. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question. When I went to my own site, I must have like 2. But when I go in here, because you're in,
Well, that's okay. You don't need to include.
it is the one.
Yeah, that's fine. So you want to write this. This file, every time we create a view, we're going to have to do this 6 things, right? We're going to create the view. We're going to create the template, which is the HTML include file. We're going to have to path it in the URL, right? And you might want to add it to the base template as a menu item. Okay, so there's a lot of different things there. I'm not sure I need to add this to the base item yet. So I want to save all. Again, one of the things that I found drove me crazy. Why isn't this working? It's because I didn't save the file. You guys need a minute for that, or you got it? Okay.
So why is there a comma after that?
Because it's separating. Oh, it's the nature of Python tuples. They have commas after each member of the list, even the last. And if there's only one member in the list, it has to have a comma. It's one of those weird things in Python that I'm not sure I understand entirely, but it is part of the Python syntax. We will have lots of them, actually. After you have more than one of these, then the comma, you have to have comma after each one, but the last one doesn't necessarily have to. Okay, so I think if we are lucky,
Global web page.
well, we won't. Before we run it, we need to run it. I'm not sure if it will here.
Wait, you gotta activate it.
I might have to activate it.
They
That's
can
what.
ask you the parentheses at the left.
Yeah, although at home I don't have that, and it never seems to matter. Let's see what happens. Manage Pi run server. Yeah, I have to activate it. So I'm going to go back a level. So the way you do that is cd space ... I am going to do source. Did I name mine BENV?
Source and slash bin.
Bin,
slash activate.
right. So we might have to do this more than once. And then it says BENV, and it's activated. I'm curious why on my laptop I never have to activate it. It seems to be always activated, but I close out.
I think it's because you have both people multiple logging in and out of the host machine itself.
No, I don't think so, because we're not all logging in. We're all on this, each one is separate.
No, what I'm saying is you're on a virtual machine. So it's almost analogous to hard booting out. all the time,
Maybe.
in and out.
What is it doing there? Go away. Whatever you're saying, go away.
What the? Oh, that is a sticky little note.
Go away. I want this to go away. I can't type with it there.
Sits up top, choice.
Activate.
I don't. Do what?
Sorry, it's for the side, the very top says choice input.
Control Alt.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what it's doing though, but I'll try. I think that's actually from, that's this.
Okay.
How did you get it to go away?
Yeah, no, I'm just like, why you just click somewhere and
Click somewhere.
yeah, somewhere outside of the
Outside.
yeah, mine shows and then I just click anywhere outside of that message and it goes.
Yeah, mine isn't going to, oh, there's an X. So I want to change to Tech Review 2 or whatever you named your folder. And now I should be able to do Python 3 manage Pi run server. Okay, now it looks good. Notice the index, the web page, 127.0.0.1.8,000.
Python 3 managed.
It's manage Pi, Python 3. I don't know if I can go up or not. Python 3 manage Pi run server. And oh, I'm gonna have to do it again. I was trying to copy the web thing, but Control C is how you kill the server. So I want to go now to the web page. Maybe somebody else can tell me what it's HTTP 127. Was it 127?
Yeah, 127.
Zero.
1.0.
Is it 1.1?
Yeah, dot one.
And then 8,000 : 8,000.
Yeah.
Did that work?
No.
So I think we have to say the other thing we have to say here is slash tech app. So 127.0.0:8000 /tech app, or tech if that's your app name. Now, those aren't working quite right. I'll have to figure out what's there. Those were just dummy index or dummy menu items. They're not working as menu items. I need to check on that, make sure what I typed wrong. But notice this is the banner header. And then it has tech reviews and it has those. Yeah. So your server isn't, change this to views. Here, import views. Up here, import views. Not there. And make some spaces before, from, space, period. So add a space, and then a space after the period. Yeah, now save that. Okay, now 0.1. Colon 8,000 slash.
Yeah.
Did you call it tech app?
So one of the things I'm looking at is under
Whatever you call it, tech.
capital tech review 2, you have two sub main things, tech app and tech review 2. So in tech review 2, so I think you guys need to review tech app.
So let's go
I think you got stuff that for us.
to your
Always
index.
keep it generally close if you can.
Needs to be extends with an S.
So close tech app, the top one. No. Open tech review 2, close this one, collapse it. Only have tech review 2 open. So notice what you're using at tech app here. Only look at tech review 2. So he needs to review from the capital tech review, the code folder. So this is so this tech review 2 doesn't exist. It's only tech review 2 inside.
You're in the right place.
Underneath there, you have tech app, tech review. That one collapse. Look at this one. So if I have Steve walk
Scroll down.
Alright.
All the way
Be able
down.
to alt tab back to your web page as well.
Okay. It looks like you're missing the URL patterns.
Are you
Yes, to the client.
No.
No, it wouldn't be there. It would be in one of the
Is the
URLs
server running?
or not. I'm not sure.
Right. So.
I'm not sure. I'm admittedly kind of lost. Steve, do you mind if I check how you wrote something?
No, go ahead.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm not able to get the server running, and I'm getting something that says I have invalid syntax on the
So there might be
include.
an error somewhere. Usually, the last line usually has the best error message. Because there were those. So that we can see it inside the This is really.
Let me see.
Now I can't even.
Okay, that's not. Yeah, this was the last command, so. Actually, it's not. Hold on.
Whatever.
Hmm?
What's the error?
It says that I have invalid syntax on
I'll
include.
take a look here in a second. If you don't find it.
Wrong one. That's Python Club.
Oh,
It's not the one that's includes. It's right there.
I compared it.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with this on my laptop.
Is there an extra space somewhere? Was there something? Was there a problem with the extra space?
Oh, there's no comma here. Wait, no, that should be. Or maybe it does. No, I don't know if it does.
Let's find out. Oh, look at that. That was the problem. Yeah, the comma. Yeah,
That should be,
this one's in the comment.
because this is an issue.
Your connection failure. It's not found.
Then you wanna do, wait,
There we go.
Did you get it, Mama?
It was not that one. Yeah. No, we already have it.
Oh, so that's not my problem. Okay.
Do you have an error?
I did have an error, but now I don't. I went back and erased the full one. And then I control that, so now I don't come up at all.
So, well, hold on. Have you tried connecting? Or have you tried going on the website? Also, you want to save
okay, yeah, this is the
index
problem I
settings.
have
You don't save it
on my left.
on index settings.
I don't know what the bug is. But
Because it had a dot right there. That shows that you didn't save it. Yeah, you can check it out on the website. No, you don't have the server running now.
yeah, this one I have to register because I looked it on my laptop, yeah.
Well, what?
That's better. See, I think the problem is just saying that loud.
Yeah, but that's.
I was just curious about
Yeah, I'm not really sure then. All the folders are named like some of the same things, which is frustrating.
Hey, Steve, when you get done with the computer, Melvina's got some file problems there.
What's the-
Oh, yeah, Steve, we're done, right?
Yeah, we're done. You were
looks like
after
we got
time
that
anyway.
What? You didn't save it. Look, you didn't save it.
Neighbor, we live in the middle of the block, and we have those houses behind our houses. We tie into the sewer line. There was roots all in there. And they have clay and we have PVC. And when it gets cold, they have a tree that's kind of on the big strip. Cherry tree, and the roots growing all along.
But where did you go?
They just keep. They want it on the first day.
That's where, yeah.
I just give it to them.
Thanks
Yeah.
for catching.
Sure.
Hey, that's good.
Unless
Unless they're safe, but I mean, like, whenever it goes.
We're still, because, you know, we're off to our line. It's just two lines.
But, yeah.
No, they're making nice pay. I said yes.
Wow.
Because I need to have one line next to the third. I'm gonna try to get the splitting in half. But we're splitting half.
Are you
Okay.
from New York?
I'm gonna try to get it. I'm gonna put it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other neighbor was screaming. But the one lady.
Oh, yeah,
when you see it.
But they're the first house on this business, so when the sewer backs up, it's backing up into their basement. And so, and I was like, that's freaking awful, you know? So we did everything we could. We ended up in one. I don't know. They're like, oh, we need a new outdoor. They want to.
Who's responsible for what? What's fair?
Yeah, I mean, you want to help and I want to help.
Fortunately, you want to help. You usually figure out what's fair. Well, sure, everybody wants to sue it. Well, to be available.
But I do not want to pay for I'm not paying for anything else. Everyone has their own thing else. They've got an overhouse. They're cleaning up. Yeah.
Or just go to YouTube and type in ITC 117.
Right. Yeah, so much fun.
Yeah, it keeps going up.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost probably did in the head for probably 20 years. And the population keeps increasing. So the homeless population keeps increasing.
Okay. Then I would go.
The drug addiction problem increasing. Doesn't directly affect me, but
Yeah. I'm not even sure at this point, like, it's all just got really complicated and confusing, and I think next class I'm gonna just ask Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, so I tried to do that, but I couldn't get the server running when I was doing the move error, and there's so many instructions at this point that it's just, I'm just confused. So I'm,
I submitted, I think I submitted.
you can find
This one, yeah, and like, and now I realize.
The first one was fun. The first one, all you needed to do is just try to go up. Right now, we need to go up.
You worked in the. So now you see what.
What's up?
Do you know how to? Okay.
So what I did was I did file. Yeah. And then I just, it's all saved. And then right at the top. Yeah. And then that'll open everything inside there, and you'll be good. You'll be okay. You'll have access to all of it.
Yeah.
And then if you click it, nope. Then just click it, click it. Then click again. Oh wait, no, my bad. It's all right there. Those are the 3 tickets. So yeah. See it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The capital, all caps, technically two. The 2 ones were technically 2 in lowercase, and then cap, lowercase, and stuff like that.
You can make it work.
Sorry, I have to, up front.
You can make it proper.
Yeah, they're
But you know, you said, if you're gonna sell it, where are you gonna go?
You can't.
I know people that bought a home years and years ago, and it was affordable, but meanwhile, they still have to pay the property taxes, which keep going up. Well, it's not just you.
Yeah.
All your neighbors are, assuming they own their homes, they would be in the same basic code. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? You know,
West Seattle.
is West Seattle cheaper? I don't think so.
So that's where it just.
I mean, West Seattle, near the end of, where it starts from, what is that called? It's like right on the border of Seattle, West Seattle, past the junction.
Is that Renton down there?
But then I have nephews and nieces living there. I I'm not 20 hours. Maybe on my birthday, once a year. This is too far out to go.
Like I said, depends on how much money you have. That business friendly.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just not fixed. That's my cousin, a couple cousins.
When that person, if you're younger.
Yeah,
I
they're
would
fairly
imagine whatever, even if they're adults, imagine they're adults. I don't think he's gonna be fine.
Yeah, it's already 12:34. That's all I wanted to see. Oh, did they have a white one?
Which class did you have from the?
Next time. I went here and
You're all built like.
I'm not playing a lot. How did it go? Did you?
no, I
Were you able to correct?
yes.
I don't remember.
But what do you have to do?
I don't know.
The whole thing, we didn't talk about it. So I was thinking about that with.
You make sense, yeah.
I was really bad at that.
I've heard a lot of people say that they think it's good. But it's your own opinion. I guess you can find any instructor. Some people like them and some people don't.
Yeah, they're different, there's different. I don't know how to fix it. But,
I think that should be,
it's just a lot of on top of it.
although it's
I think.
I've heard people that try taking free programs. I say,
it should be the same as,
Oh. I was thinking it's like a balance. I'm trying to wait it down.
You know yourself, you gotta take everything, your whole life into consideration. And have the time you have.
Yeah.
It's a real personal decision. Nobody else can really tell you. And they don't live with you, they don't live inside of you. Nobody knows you.
so we
I
have.
feel like a cat.
I
think I miss my cat.
Be different.
Yeah.
If it's outside of those.
Oh, no, this is a folder.
There is one in so this one is using,
Was this a folder?
Sometimes you wonder,
Yeah.
really my kid, because they can be so different. And they can be different from both ends.
Yeah, they just, I don't make an HTML file.
And then you have.
Oh, okay.
And they're both here.
So I'm gonna.
Yeah. My son just graduated this year. And then my daughter, she's 20.
Yeah, I told you.
Yeah. She went to Central, but when they didn't have her, so she went for a year, and then she- What do you do? Something in Valley Valley.
We added. So this one will have less.
That's the general review site.
I don't know what to say.
It's gonna take. see all of that. And if you need to, I'm going to post what I just did now on GitHub. And I need to have a little bit of lunch.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's not gonna be anything to work on, but that is your class. Tomorrow,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
that's key roles tomorrow.
So you're in the. Right, so you
I
need
think
to.
that we will coordinate. Yeah, everything.
So you need to CD.
Oh, what now?
For whatever reason on Wednesday.
Did you figure out where these were saved?
Questions. It's saved on my computer, but it's not the same. That'd be awesome. That's okay. That's amazing.
You too.
Weekend.
Close it out. Got the ghost. Yeah.
Mình là sẽ em sẽ đi không được not of the sign to the one hand.
So I think we did all of that.
And another thing we don't have time.
I don't think I do right now. No. We can do it later, but I can't do it this second.
Steve, do you have office hours after lunch?
No, because I have class I have class in 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Is it here?
Yeah.
You said it's okay to turn in assignments late.
Yeah, so don't worry about the due dates.
Should we just message you on Canvas?
You can,
How should we do that?
it's just fine. Just turn it in when you're
Oh,
done.
does it still work? Does Canvas usually locks assignments?
Oh, it's only locks them if I tell it to and I don't tell it to.
Oh, okay.
Exposing others.
There will be open lab times.
But you know, the problem is that there's no virtual machines in the campus other than here,
Right.
and that's why we need.
Yeah, I know. So Fridays are wide open. I don't know if there's a class in here on the afternoons on Thursdays. There may be.
No, I have a problem on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did you save the video you?
So it's still running, so
Yeah.
I need to kill. So there's going to be a lot of dead stuff at the end of that video.
Mr. Ronnie.
Yeah.